everyone. It is Tuesday. My gosh, I'm losing all track of days. Welcome to 50 Days to 50. I'm really excited to have my friend Cris Oehler on today because I used to see Cris somewhat regularly because we started with a professional relationship and then she retired. And now I haven't seen her for years and years. So I think I told some of you or all of you yesterday that one of the things that's been fun about this whole conversation journey is that I'm reconnecting with people from various parts of my life. So let's bring Cris on. Hi, Cris.
Hi, good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
So, Cris, you and I kind of got to be good friends. And then I feel like very shortly after that, you retired. And I remember thinking, wait, what? Retired? But that was a while ago now. So you've been retired for how long?
4.5 years.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
You retired on the right side of COVID, I think.
I did. I felt a little guilty. You know, I've had two careers. One was as a public school teacher. One was in the electric utility industry. And I felt guilty that COVID year, being thankful that I wasn't trying to figure out how to manage a classroom and how to do everything online. And then I was thankful that I wasn't trying to lead a team at Ottertail. And then I felt guilty for being thankful. But,
well, you're a good Midwestern woman. You don't want to be too grateful. You got to have a little guilt built into all the things.
Right.
Well, okay. So you were very fortunate to get to retire earlier than your average bear. So you've had this very full retirement as a relatively young person. So what has that been like for you?
Well, I was 60. And so I'm coming up on my 65th birthday.
Okay.
But for me, you know, I did some of my life backward compared to other people. So in my 50s, I found I had a second chance at love, a second marriage that came with it, children that I hadn't had previously. I was developing something I'd started in my 40s was just horseback riding. And I mean, like midlife crisis, turn 40, buy a horse, have no previous experience. And in my 50s had then ridden with some girlfriends across the state of North Dakota, for example. And so my retirement has been able to build on some of those things. And, you know, I just get to do that. You know, I get to play in the woods with the dog. I get to ride with girlfriends and horses, and I get time to make supper and decide what I want to cook and have fun with food and develop relationships with my stepchildren who are, you know, older now. The youngest one turns 22 on Friday, but there's a lot of good. I get to read good books. I get to stand on the boards of things that I believe in, and you know, it's just good. Get to spend some time with my parents who moved to this area so that we could be closer as they're in their late 80s. And yeah, it's good.
Well, it's fantastic. So tell me one or two lessons that you learned leading up to 50. And you've just hinted at a few of them, but one or two lessons you learned leading up to 50 that have served you really well post 50.
You know, it's kind of like, what story do you want to hear? I mean, I learned about courage when I was 6 years old from my father at the Reptile Gardens in South Dakota in a way that I've never forgotten. I learned also from my father, I learned about really the core of my faith when I was 16 years old, after a Fiddler on the Roof practice out in Fort Totten Little Theater. When I was 32, or maybe I was 34 years old, I learned from my 8th graders who I was teaching what it is that middle school age students want from adults. And there are things like that throughout. I mean, so it's like, what? But every one of them is a story. So what do you want? Which one do you want to hear?
What do I want to know? I want to know about courage, because I think what hangs a lot of people up is they don't have the courage to possibly fail. And so they don't have the courage to dream and strive.
Okay, so we are a little family of 4. We go camping. I have a brother just 13 months younger than I am. I'm 6'7", he's 5'6", he's in his dinosaur period. And so to support his dinosaur interest, we're going to go to the Reptile Gardens of South Dakota.
I know
And
it well.
Yep. And they have a room there. It's like a kind of a giant terrarium, sort of like a yellow brick road that goes around the circle of it. But there are trees arching over it and things growing. And there might be snakes hanging down from the trees and little things scurrying across the path. And I was terrified to go in there. And my brother was racing ahead to go in there. My mother was going to stay in the car.
Okay.
Dad was going to take us in. And I got behind Dad, and I had a ball of the back of his shirt in my little fist. And I just had my head down, and he ran interference. Well, my brother ran ahead and collected things, you know. And the tears, I even then was a silent crier. So I was making no noise, but the tears were just running down. And I remember my brother catching a horned toad and bringing it over, not to scare me, meaning to share, but it's like, look at this, you know, and here's this little creature with eyes that go in all different directions. I was just terrified. And when we got to the exit, here was a pretty young woman. I'm sure she was a college student, and she's dressed like she's going on safari, and she has the shirt with the epaulets on the shoulder, and she's got a hat that's folded up on one side, you know, and she's filling out certificates of courage for the children. So she puts your name, you know, your name and the date on it, and she fills out my brother's and hands it to him, and he runs on off to show Mom in the car. And she fills out one for me, and I can read already by this time. And I look at my certificate of courage. And I turn around, I hand it back to her. And Dad kneels down, you know, to be eyeball to eyeball with me. He was so good about that always. And he says, "What's the matter, sweetheart?" And I say, "Daddy, I don't deserve it. I was scared the whole time we were in there." And he said, "Oh, sweetheart, didn't you know? It really didn't take any courage for your brother to come in here, because he wasn't afraid in the first place. You came even though you were afraid. That's what courage is. That takes courage."
Oh,
yeah. And so for the whole rest of my life, it's like, well, okay, here we go. I'm scared, but I know.
yeah, that makes me cry a little bit, Cris. That's an incredible lesson.
He's an incredible man.
Wow.
Yeah, he was always able to make things succinct and stick. And I took that with me wherever I went. I mean, even my transition from teaching school to, I had no business background. Mm-hmm. And I go into this, you know, this corporate setting, this world, you know, even energy world that I knew nothing about. Here we go. We'll figure it out. We know how to ask for help when we need help. We have a good mind. Let's get to work, you know.
Well, and Cris, just to further cement the value and importance of that lesson, what was your job title when you retired from Otter Tail?
I was the vice president of public relations for Otter Tail Power Company and the vice president of corporate communications for Otter Tail Corporation. You know, they had women in, like they'd had women in like corporate council roles.
Okay.
But they had never officially had a female vice president until I was offered that role in my 50s. So, you know, so what are your 50s? You know, Dana, don't even worry about it. They're a continuation of adventures. They build on some of the things that you already do. They create echoes to lessons you had in the past. And you're like, oh yeah, I learned about that. And now I'm applying it again and in a new way, or I'm carrying it in another way. That's your 50s. That's your 60s. You know, I think Erik Erikson was the psychologist. I'm hearkening back now to learning about human growth and development when I got my education degree. But I think the work of the 50s and 60s, or those decades, is kind of like I believe it's called, the work is integrity versus despair. right? And so as you're looking at, you've got this broader perspective now of the world. And if you're going to be upset about what's happening in the world, or divisiveness, or what's the changes in your body that you can't control, or whatever, you could fall into despair. So it's the work to make a choice about who are you really? What's your legacy, and what do you want to focus on? And I think we do find focus. And while I'm just talking, because I have too many words all the time anyway, but one of the joys of my 50s and 60s has been how I'm connecting with my grown kids, and one of them, my daughter Rebecca, she gave me a book called On Tyranny. Have you read it?
I know of it. I've not read it.
Okay, so he writes in there about how does one person impact or help protect our democracy from fascism, for example. I'm like, oh, great question, because everything seems so big. And he just suggests choose the institutions, the democratic institutions that matter to you, and support them. I mean, be involved with them. And so for me, that's public educations and public education, public libraries. So if I'm retired and I'm volunteering, then I'm going to volunteer with the Viking library system as a board member, because I really believe getting books and access to materials equally to all people is how we save the world, Or I'm involved with Women United, and our goal is our mission is early childhood literacy. So we want to put books in the hands of all the children birth to age 5 in our county. And how do you, because that's what'll save the world, is some kind of understanding, good education. I think democracies are saved by a fairly prosperous middle class that can work. And how do you do that? You do that through good public education. And I support math and science, but it's literature and the understanding of literature and being able to express yourself that gets us connected. Because I just think there's so much power in story. So
Absolutely. Well, I'll just say to my listening audience, is it any wonder that when I first met Cris, I thought, what do I have to do to be friends with her? I really did think that, and it has never, ever wavered. You are among the most fascinating people I have ever known.
But isn't it funny? Because I kind of said the same thing. Like, you walked into my office.
We felt it about each other. I remember
you were basically there to ask for money.
Yes.
So I could have been sort of jaded about that or whatever, but there was some instant connection, and that's fun when that happens. I think
it is. It doesn't happen often enough. So tell me, here, I got to put this up from my mother, Cris. Amen's sister,
I want to
library queen. You do need to meet my mother. We will make that happen. We will absolutely make that happen. All right. My last question for you, Cris, because you've given so many things to consider. Tell me what has been some of, or you can pick the one if you've got one, but some of the most joyful aspects of being 50. And I feel like you've really started to touch on this, but let's just wrap it up.
To me, all things are so intertwined and so related, and are so, everything in every decade, and these lessons that keep echoing that I don't, I live a joyful life. But I guess I would say so far, I'm lucky. I wonder if it wasn't, I've been watching all of your your interviews, but I can't figure out how to find them live. So I have to watch them all when you post your Sunday newsletter. Okay. But this technology just kicks my ass. But anyway, can you say that on a podcast?
You can.
I think my favorite one so far has been, and there's been something great about every one of them, but your drama teacher from MSUM.
Oh, Jim Bartroff. Yes.
Coach. Yeah, I just really enjoyed and related to so many things that he said. And I think he said what I would say, I've been lucky to have my good health. I don't want to jinx anything by saying it, but the strength physical strength that I still have at 65 and I'm working on, and value, because I think it just builds your immune system. I think it builds your positive mental attitude. I think it keeps you strong enough to, I've got a 10-month-old first, grandbaby. I have a 12-year-old step grandson too, who's just a bookworm, and I just love that. But to be able to roll around the floor with the baby, all of that. I mean, I can do pull-ups, multiple pull-ups, and I can deadlift 235 pounds. And, it just, I don't know, something about just being able to be strong and healthy right now, so that I can throw a 42-pound saddle up on the back of my horse, so that I can hoist myself up there. That's been a joy to me that I'm really grateful for, because everybody doesn't get that. And you don't know what age you're going to be when you don't get that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I want to make sure we see Amy Arness, 2 awesome women here. Thanks, Amy, for watching and commenting. Okay, Cris, this has only reinvigorated my desire to see you in person. Oh, wait, we got to put up another comment from Amy. Watching you live during hip replacement recovery and hoping for many more years of vitality. I've always cared for my health and have just turned 60.
Does she mean it? She's having hip replacement?
Well, I think you must be recovering now.
Oh, recovery.
Yeah, I don't think she's like in the midst of, the hammering. I hope not. I hope it's going well for you, Amy.
Yeah.
But thanks again for watching.
She had a cowboy hat on in that.
Created my desire to see you. And so I'm going to stop saying I want to see you, and I'm going to say I will see you. Just Amy's comment 6 days ago. Wow. Good for you, Amy.
In there.
So we will make this happen in the new year, Cris. Well, I can still lift 42 pounds. I had no idea saddles weighed 42 pounds.
Well, it's a big, I don't rope, but it's a big roping saddle that I just love.
Oh.
But you can get lighter saddles.
Okay.
If you come ride with me, I'll saddle your horse for you.
Okay, thanks. Just because we both know what a disservice that would be to the horse to have to muddle through me figuring it out for the first time. So thanks for joining me, Cris.
Yeah,
thanks for a really lovely lesson. And please tell your dad that I also will never forget his lesson on courage.
I will tell him that, and I'll tell you more stories about him when I see you.
I cannot wait. Everybody else, we will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us.